Okay, wow, you've sent us a ton of articles this time. Let me tell you, things are getting really interesting in the world of cybersecurity.
Yeah, definitely keeping us on our toes.
We've got data breaches, malware, vulnerabilities, even some predictions about the future of OT security. It's all here.
It is fascinating to see how these seemingly isolated events actually reveal larger trends, like vulnerabilities that impact us all.
Yeah, it's all connected. So buckle up because we are diving deep into all of it today. First up, let's talk about this OpenAI account leak. A hacker is claiming to have access to 20 million accounts. 20 million.
It's a big one.
Yeah.
And they're putting them up for sale on the dark web. That's a lot of personal information potentially exposed.
It is, and it raises the question, how did they get access to so many accounts? I mean, this can't be just a simple phishing scheme, right?
Right, it's unlikely to be just phishing. So we're probably looking at a vulnerability that was exploited. The report mentions auth0.openai.com as a possible culprit.
Okay, so maybe a vulnerability. Anything else it could be.
Well, they may have obtained administrator credentials, which, that would give them the keys to the kingdom.
Uh-oh, not good. So let's talk about the potential fallout. I mean, people use ChatGPT for everything these days, from writing emails to, I don't know, coding websites. So what are the risks if your account is compromised?
There are a lot of ways this could go wrong. For example, attackers could use stolen API keys to generate tons of malicious content, flooding the internet with spam or even impersonating legitimate users.
Oh, so spreading disinformation and all that.
Exactly. And then there's the financial risk. They could rack up charges on users' OpenAI accounts,
Yeah.
essentially, stealing their computing power.
Makes sense. And what about all that information people share in ChatGPT?
Oh, yeah, that's a huge concern. All that data could be used for phishing, identity theft, you name it. It's really sensitive stuff.
It's scary to think about. And this couldn't come at a worse time for OpenAI with all the controversy around their data collection practices. Remember that whole DeepSeek thing?
Oh, right, the allegations about them using ChatGPT data to train their own AI.
Exactly. This breach just adds fuel to the fire. So, before we move on, what can OpenAI users do right now to protect themselves?
Well, the basics are still crucial. Change your password right away. And enable multi-factor authentication if you haven't already. It's an extra lock on your digital door.
Got it. And be careful about phishing attempts, especially ones that might use information from this breach.
Right. If something seems off, it probably is.
Good advice. It seems like even the most advanced AI companies are not immune to cyber threats.
No one is immune, that's for sure.
Speaking of emerging threats, let's talk about this BadIIS malware. It's hitting government institutions, universities, all sorts of organizations, mostly in Asian countries, it seems.
Yeah, and what's interesting here is the strategy. So there's this Chinese-speaking group behind BadIIS. They're exploiting vulnerabilities in ISO servers.
Okay, ISO servers, those are commonly used for hosting websites, right?
Exactly. But they're not attacking the websites themselves. Instead, they're modifying the server's responses to redirect users to malicious sites.
So it's like they're manipulating search results, right? So unsuspecting users are more likely to click on a bad link.
Yes, it's a form of SEO manipulation. A sneaky one. And they're often redirecting users to illegal gambling sites.
Oh, I see. They're trying to profit from it. But the implications go beyond gambling, don't they? I mean, they could redirect users to sites with malware, right? Or phishing pages.
Absolutely. That's the real danger. Malware, phishing, all of that is possible with this technique.
So how can organizations protect themselves from BadIIS and other attacks like it?
Basic cybersecurity hygiene is key. Patching systems, keeping software up to date, monitoring for anything unusual. Think of it like maintaining your car. You wouldn't drive around with bald tires, right?
No way.
Exactly.
Okay, so preventative maintenance is key. Now, let's talk about Cloudflare. They've had a rough week, starting with that 59-minute outage that impacted their R2 object storage.
Yeah, R2 was down completely. And other services, like Stream and Images, experienced increased errors.
Wow, so 100% failure rate for R2. That's not good.
Not at all. And there were some issues with log delivery, too. But thankfully, Cloudflare says no data was lost or corrupted.
That's a relief. What caused this outage? Was it hackers?
Nope. Human error. A team member was trying to fix a phishing issue, but their action accidentally disabled the entire R2 gateway service.
Oh, wow. A single mistake caused a domino effect. But shouldn't a company like Cloudflare have safeguards to prevent that kind of thing?
You would think so. But they're taking steps to prevent this from happening again, implementing additional guardrails, two-party approval for sensitive operations, things like that.
Good. That's good to hear. But wait, there's more. Cloudflare also had to deal with a vulnerability in their mutual TLS implementation. Can you explain mutual TLS?
Sure. Mutual TLS or MTLS is basically two-way authentication.
Mm-hmm.
Both the user and the server verify each other's identities.
Okay, so it's like a double check for security. So what was the problem with Cloudflare's implementation?
There was a vulnerability that could allow unauthorized session resumption.
Session resumption.
Yeah, like when you use a safe password. It's convenient, but in this case, it allowed attackers to reuse a password to access parts of the system they shouldn't have access to.
Ah, I get it. So even with MTLS, there was a way for attackers to slip in. Did Cloudflare fix it?
They did. They were really quick about it. Mitigated the vulnerability within 32 hours. They
Mhm.
disabled session resumption for MTLS just to be safe.
Smart move. Okay, let's move on to some guidings from CISA, the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. They've released new recommendations for securing communications infrastructure.
Yes, and AWS is stepping up to help organizations implement those guidelines. They've got a whole suite of cloud-native security features that can be really helpful.
So it's not just about migrating to the cloud, it's about doing it securely. But managing security in the cloud can be tricky, right?
It can be. But AWS is using a shared responsibility model. It's like renting an apartment. AWS provides the building and secures the structure, but you are responsible for securing your apartment itself.
Okay, so they take care of the building, but you take care of your own space. What tools do they provide to help organizations secure their apartment?
A lot, actually. They have Amazon VPC for network segmentation, IAM for managing user access, Security Lake for centralized logging, Config for configuration management, and KMS for encryption.
Wow, that's a lot of tools. Sounds like AWS is taking cloud security seriously. Now let's shift gears and talk about Metasploit.
Ah, Metasploit. The framework for developing and executing exploit code. Penetration testers use it, and so do attackers.
It's a powerful tool, for good or for bad.
Exactly. And their latest update has two new modules that are worth talking about.
Okay, tell me more.
One targets Argus surveillance DVRs. It exploits a vulnerability that lets attackers grab files from the device.
Oh, so they could access sensitive data,
Hmm?
or even control the camera.
Potentially, yes.
That's unsettling. What about the other module?
It's an HTTP login scanner for Avanti Connect Secure, which is popular VPN. It helps identify vulnerable VPN servers.
So both of these modules could be used for malicious purposes, right? But they're also valuable tools for security professionals.
Exactly. It's all about using these tools to find vulnerabilities before the bad guys do.
It's a constant race, isn't it? Always trying to stay one step ahead. Before we move on to the next batch of articles, I'm curious about your thoughts on OT security. What are some of the key trends you're seeing?
Well, one big trend is the convergence of IT and OT systems. They used to be separate, but now they're interconnected, which introduces new risks.
Right, because a vulnerability in an IT system could impact a critical OT system.
Exactly. So we're seeing more holistic patching approaches, not just focusing on individual devices. Organizations are starting to manage the entire attack surface.
So it's a broader approach to security?
Yes, and we're seeing increased cloud adoption in OT environments,
Mm.
which comes with its own security challenges.
Of course. So the cloud is both a blessing and a curse. What about 5G? How does that factor into OT security?
5G is a game changer for OT, but it also expands the attack surface. Its low latency and high bandwidth are great for remote monitoring and control, but if the network is compromised, attackers could gain control of critical systems.
So it's all about balancing the benefits with the risks. And what about AI? How does that fit into the future of OT security?
AI is going to play a huge role on both sides. Attackers will use it for more sophisticated attacks, and defenders will use it for better threat detection and response.
It's like a technological arms race.
It is.
Okay, we've covered a lot of ground already, from account leaks and malware campaigns to outage postmortems and predictions for the future. But we're just getting started. We've got more cybersecurity news to unpack, including some examples of the good, the bad, and the ugly. Stick around.
Looking forward to it. It's fascinating to see how these stories play out in the real world.
Mm-hmm.
All right, some good news first. Spanish police arrested someone behind a wave of cyber attacks. Over 40 attacks,
Right.
apparently.
Wow, 40 attacks. That's a lot. What were they targeting?
Oh, well, all sorts of organizations, like
Mhm.
government institutions and universities.
Okay, pretty broad range. Any
Right.
specifics?
Yeah, big ones like the Guardia Civil, the Ministry of Defense,
Yeah.
even NATO and the U.S. Army. It looks like they were trying to get into databases with personal information,
Mhm.
names, addresses, that kind of thing.
Ah, so classic identity theft stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And some of it ended up on dark web forums, like breach forums, so it's out there.
not good. Speaking of cybercrime, there's been a big development in the decentralized finance world.
Oh yeah, the DeFi world.
Authorities charged a Canadian man with stealing $65 million from two DeFi protocols.
Kyberswap and indexed finance. A big heist.
Huge. DeFi, decentralized finance, for those who don't know, it's like a digital banking system without a central authority, right?
That's a good way to put it. It uses blockchain technology.
Okay. So how did he steal so much?
He found vulnerabilities in what are called smart contracts.
Smart contracts.
They're basically self-executing contracts on the blockchain, designed to automate things, but they can be vulnerable if not designed properly.
Ah, so he found loopholes and exploited them.
Exactly. Drained funds from Kyberswap and index finance. He even tried to extort Kyberswap, demanding control of the platform to get half the money back.
Wow, what a story. Bold move, but sounds like he got caught.
He did, facing serious charges now. Wire fraud, attempted extortion, money laundering. This case is a big warning for the DeFi community. Security is crucial, even in the decentralized world.
Absolutely. It's a good reminder for everyone. So we've talked about law enforcement taking down cybercriminals. That's the good news. But there's some bad news, too.
Yeah, unfortunately, there's been a spyware campaign targeting journalists and public figures.
Spyware. How are they spreading it?
Through WhatsApp.
WhatsApp? I thought that was supposed to be secure.
It is, generally, end-to-end encryption and all. But they exploited what's called a zero-click vulnerability.
Zero click. What does that even mean?
It means you don't even have to click anything to get infected. They sent malicious PDFs in group chats, apparently. Just receiving the message triggers the exploit.
So you could be just chatting with friends, and bam, your phone is infected. That's scary.
It's a big concern. And it targeted some high-profile folks, journalists, activists, even the co-founder of a humanitarian charity.
Wow, so a pretty diverse group of victims. Do we know who's behind it?
No, not yet. That's common with these sophisticated spyware campaigns. The company behind the spyware, Paragon Solutions, they've sold this stuff to governments before.
So it could be a government.
Possibly. It raises a lot of questions about how this kind of software is used, both legitimate surveillance and, potentially malicious stuff.
Yeah, it's a slippery slope. And speaking of slippery slopes, there's also been a phishing campaign targeting high-profile X accounts. Journalists, politicians, tech, and crypto folks, you name it.
Phishing. It never goes away, does it?
Never. So what are they after this time? Credentials? Malware?
Looks like they're mostly trying to hijack accounts and use them to spread crypto scams.
So taking advantage of the trust people have in those accounts.
Exactly. And hijacking those accounts can do a lot of damage. Damage reputations, spread misinformation, manipulate markets even.
It's not just about stealing money anymore, it's about information control.
Right. Cybersecurity is about protecting trust, not just data. Okay, let's move on to the world of nation-state actors.
Uh-oh, this is where things get serious.
We got some North Korean malware to talk about. A new version of the MacOS Ferret family. They're calling it Flexible Ferret.
North Korean malware on Macs. I thought Macs were safe.
That's a myth, unfortunately. North Korea has targeted Macs before, and this new variant is pretty sneaky.
What makes it so sneaky?
Well, older versions use malicious shell scripts and fake software updates. This one disguises itself as a Zoom update, and it's signed with a real Apple developer signature.
Wait, a real signature, so it looks legitimate.
Yeah, that's how it bypasses Apple's security checks. It's tough to spot and remove.
Like a wolf in sheep's clothing. How are they spreading it?
Traditionally, they've targeted job seekers with fake video conferencing software, but now they're going after developers on GitHub.
GitHub, the code repository.
Yep, they're opening fake issues on legitimate projects, pretending to be security researchers or concerned users. Those issues have links to malicious websites or files.
So they're taking advantage of the open source community.
Yeah, exploiting that collaborative spirit. It's a reminder that even trusted platforms can be used for bad things.
It's a good reminder to always be cautious. Always double check things.
Absolutely. Okay, let's take a break from the doom and gloom for a second and talk about something a little more lighthearted.
Lighthearted cybersecurity news. I'm intrigued.
Let's celebrate the 30th anniversary of SSL 2.0.
SSL 2.0, the protocol that's been considered outdated and insecure for over a decade.
The one and only.
Yeah.
It was cutting edge back in the day, but now it's a security risk.
Right. It was officially deprecated in 2011.
And yet it's still out there. Shodan reports almost 423,000 publicly accessible servers that support SSL 2.0.
Wow, seriously? That's a lot of vulnerable systems. Why are they still online?
It's a mix of things. Some organizations might not know the risks, others might not have the resources to upgrade, and some legacy systems just can't be taken offline easily.
It's a tough situation. But those systems are ticking time bombs, aren't they?
Pretty much. And it's not just SSL 2.0 itself. Any device supporting it probably has other outdated software with even bigger vulnerabilities.
So what can we do about it? How do we get organizations to modernize their systems?
Awareness is key. Organizations need to understand the risks. Governments and industry groups can help with guidance and resources.
And what can individuals do?
Pay attention to the websites you visit. Look for signs of outdated security. Keep your software up to date. Be careful about what you install.
Good advice. Be informed, be cautious, and be proactive. Okay, let's shift gears again and talk about red teams.
Red teams. The good guys pretending to be the bad guys.
Exactly. They help organizations test their security. And they often use a tactic called opportunistic phishing. Can you explain that?
Sure. Unlike targeted phishing, opportunistic phishing doesn't focus on a specific victim. It's more about casting a wide net.
Like phishing with dynamite.
Haha, exactly. They're looking for anyone who might take the bait. Let's say a red team finds out a former employee still has access to a system.
Okay, so they exploit that.
They might send a phishing email pretending to be IT, asking the person to click a link to verify their account or something.
Oh, to see if they fall for it.
Right. And if they click a link, it takes them to a fake website that looks real. If they enter their login, the red team is in.
Clever. It's a good way to test security awareness and those offboarding procedures.
It is. Companies need to revoke access immediately when someone leaves. And employees need security awareness training. It's everyone's responsibility.
Right. You can't just rely on technology. People need to be educated about the threats.
Absolutely. Speaking of education, let's talk about the Zero-Day Initiative, the ZDI.
Oh, the folks who run those PN2 hacking contests.
Those are the ones. They've been busy. In 2024, they published 1,741 advisories. That's a lot of vulnerabilities.
Wow, that's a lot. So they're finding tons of bugs.
Yep. And they work with vendors to get them patched quickly. They're really focused on responsible disclosure.
So who are they focusing on in 2024? Any particular companies?
Autodesk was the top vendor, actually, and Delta Electronics, which is big in industrial automation.
Industrial automation, that's a critical sector.
It is. And for the first time, they reported more vulnerabilities in Apple products than Adobe products.
Interesting. No one is immune, it seems. What kinds of vulnerabilities are they finding, like those super complex zero-day exploits?
Some, yes. But a lot of them are pretty basic. Stack overflows, SQL injections, things that have been around forever.
You'd think we'd have those fixed by now.
You would. But software development is complex, and mistakes happen. It shows how important those basic security practices still are.
Right, the fundamentals. Input validation, secure coding, regular patching.
Exactly. The ZDI isn't just about finding vulnerabilities, though. They're also about educating the community and working with vendors to make things better.
So they're helping to raise the bar for security overall.
Exactly. And they've got a lot planned for 2025. Peer-to-own automotive is already underway, targeting connected cars, and they're planning another peer-to-own contest for other products.
Okay.
Plus, they're updating their website, expanding their videos, all sorts of stuff.
Busy year ahead. But it's good to see them making such a positive impact on cybersecurity.
Agreed. Okay, we've got one more article to discuss, and it's a bit of a doozy. It's about malware that's targeting gamers.
Gamers. What's so valuable about gamers?
Their accounts. Gamers often spend a lot of money on virtual items, in-game currency, that kind of thing.
Oh, so their digital stuff has real-world value.
Big time. And this malware, they're calling it Level Up. It steals login credentials, financial info, and all those valuable in-game assets.
So it's like those digital swords and shields are worth real money.
Yeah, they can be. And that's what makes gamers such attractive targets for cybercriminals. This Level Up malware is all about stealing that stuff. Logins, financial information, in-game items, you name it.
So how does it get onto their systems? Is it phishing emails or maybe those fake game updates?
It's a bit sneakier than that. They're using something called malvertising. Basically, they inject malicious code into legitimate online ads. You know, the ones you see on gaming websites, forums, even streaming platforms.
So you could be just browsing a website and bam, you're infected.
That's the danger. You might click on an ad, or sometimes just viewing it is enough, and boom, the malware downloads without you even knowing. It's really tough to spot.
So what happens when this Level Up malware gets on your system? What kind of havoc does it wreak?
Well, imagine your gaming account is hijacked. All your virtual currency is gone, your rare items are sold off, everything. It's a nightmare for a gamer.
That's rough.
And it's not just the virtual stuff. This malware can also steal passwords, credit card info, all that.
Double whammy, virtual and real-world damage. So what can gamers do to protect themselves?
Awareness is key. Be careful about clicking on ads, even on sites you trust. It's like, don't take candy from strangers, right? But in this case, it's digital candy.
Good analogy.
But don't just rely on vigilance. Keep your system and browser updated, use strong passwords, and enable multi-factor authentication. It's like adding layers of armor to your account.
Solid advice. And of course, use a good antivirus program.
Always a good idea.
It seems like the same cybersecurity rules apply everywhere, whether you're gaming or banking online.
Absolutely. Cybersecurity is everyone's responsibility.
Well said. Well, that brings us to the end of another deep dive. We covered a lot today: data breaches, malware, vulnerabilities, the works. It's clear that cybersecurity is a complex and ever-changing field.
It is, and it's a field that affects all of us.
It does. So remember, stay informed, be proactive, and don't underestimate the bad guys. They're always out there, looking for new ways to exploit us, but we're smarter than them. We just need to stay vigilant.
And keep those sources coming. We love to dive deep into this stuff.
We do. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of cybersecurity. Stay safe out there, everyone.